Welcome again, everybody, to our crucial conversations on racism. Our purpose, as always, is to model generative dialogue between people about racial injustice. We've been here since early June, having these conversations on Sunday nights and sometimes on Thursday nights. I hope tonight's conversation is going to inspire you as you do your own work in community with others. Talking about racism, it may not be comfortable, but this conversation will not kill us, and I'm positive that all of us will still be alive today at 7:15 or so when we wrap this up. Please do use the chat mechanism to share feedback and post your questions tonight. You can also email your questions directly to Whitney Bogle. We will try our best to get to as many of them as possible. Whitney is posting her email address in the chat box now. Send your questions to her if you'd like to remain anonymous. Tonight concludes, I guess, our summer series, which has been going on every single Sunday night since early June. And next week, we will not have a crucial conversation on Sunday nights. We'll begin our monthly series, and that begins September the 13th, where we'll be having a guest every month. Next Sunday, September 13th, Jim Schutz, who was a columnist with the Dallas Observer and also the author of The Accommodation, a book on politics and race here in the city of Dallas. Book is out of print, but you will, if you're interested in joining us on the 13th, we've got a link to a PDF version that you can read. I read The Accommodation straight through about 3 weeks ago myself. It's a fascinating book that help me to understand the history of the city. So we'll look forward to having Jim Schutz here with us on the 13th, and hope you are able to join us as well. Well, enough about the 13th. Tonight's a special night because we've got Dr. Evelyn Parker here with us as our guest for tonight's crucial conversation. Dr. Parker is a graduate of Lambeth College and Prairie View A&M University. Before she began her theological studies, she was a scientist. She's a research scientist in the Department of Human Biological Chemistry and Genetics at the University of Texas at Galveston. Sometime after doing her research work there, she went on to hold the Master of Religious Education from Perkins School of Theology at SMU, and she now also holds a PhD from the Joint Program of Garrett Evangelical Theological Seminary and Northwestern University. The focus of Dr. Parker's theological, of her PhD work was an emphasis in Christian education and womanist approaches to religion and society, and also education and public policy. Dr. Parker in 2019 received a Fulbright scholarship, which led her to Cape Town, South Africa, where the focus of her research was the role of religious leaders in preventing and intervening in teen dating violence. Almost done, Dr. Parker. Hold on. She's also the president of the Association of Practical Theology and president-elect of the Society for the Study of Black Religion. Dr. Parker has also served as the academic dean at Perkins School of Theology from 2013 to 2019. So, Dr. Parker, welcome.
Thank you.
Should also note, it's not in your bio, but Dr. Parker is also a friend of mine now. So we met after Dr. Parker visited First Presbyterian Church of Dallas, and we connected through the welcome pad. I saw her name there, and as I do with most of our visitors, I sent her a little note, and we managed to get together for a brief meal, and we've talked a couple times since then. So, Dr. Parker, thank you for being here with us.
My pleasure.
Well, let's begin. Where are you now? Where are you situated?
Literally, I am in my mother's dining room in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, my hometown, where I am visiting her for right now. So yeah. So hopefully everything will go well in Mississippi, and we'll continue to have good internet, and we won't have to go to an alternative plan here on our cell phone. So yeah.
Did you grow up in Mississippi?
I did, but my earliest years were on the farm of my maternal grandmother, and then we eventually moved to Hattiesburg, where my dad and my mom took jobs and worked in Hattiesburg. But prior to that, they worked in Covington County. So Covington County, where my earliest years were, was very rural, on a farm road, I guess you can call it, off Highway 35 or something like that. I forget. But anyway, very farm. I grew up picking cucumbers and relaxing on my mother's cotton sack, actually, in the summertime. They were teachers in the winter, and they farmed in the summertime. Yes.
When you are not in Dallas and you're in Mississippi, what do you miss about Dallas?
Honestly, Trader Joe's. It's just true. I'm a Trader Joe's addicted. Addicted to Trader Joe's. But let's see what else. Friends, of course. Yeah, hanging out with friends, and the convenience of that, I guess. Yeah.
And when you're in Dallas and you're not in Mississippi, what do you miss about Mississippi?
Well, since I have found opportunity to go back to the rural area where my earliest years were, I really kind of miss the serenity and quietness of the countryside. I like that. So Hattiesburg has been a small town until Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf Coast. And then it grew about 20,000 people. So I guess it's around 80,000 now. It's short of 100,000. So, so it's a little bit, and well, I guess the good thing about that is a lot of New Orleans cuisine came to Hattiesburg during Katrina. There's lots of Cajun food and jazz. I've not experienced it, but I've just recently seen these jazz clubs and things like that. So it's kind of a new place, but it's still laid back and quiet. Yeah, has a lot of history, a lot of painful history, I must say. Vernon Damer, some people might know him. Vernon Damer was a civil rights leader in Forest County, and the Ku Klux Klan firebombed his property, and he saved all of his family, but he received extensive burns and eventually died as a result of those burns. So his legacy is here, and they actually erected a statue of him in front of the courthouse that at one time you had to pay a poll tax to actually register to vote.
And now there's a statue of him there.
Yes. And little known fact, the church that I grew up in, St. James Christian Methodist Episcopal Church, was one block down the street from STIC, the Student Nonviolent Committee. And we used to slip out of church after Sunday school and go down and watch these college students in SNCC do their work. It was amazing to me because I'd never seen Black and white college students working together. And so we would just stand in the door like deer in the headlights, like, wow, look at those college students working away.
Wow.
And little did I know, people like Bob Davis was in there. What's his name? Bob Moses. I think that's his name. Bob Moses. And probably Ruby Doris Smith Robinson. I mean, people that you read about were probably within my midst, because that was, I was young. At least I like to think I was young at that time, but that was during Freedom Summer when they were in Mississippi. Yeah.
So this right now you're on research leave, I believe, right?
That's correct.
So I get out of office messages from you whenever I email you, but we still manage to connect. I've been thinking about how to tell a movement of God's Spirit from the flavor of the month, and you've been a student and a teacher and an administrator in higher education long enough to tell the difference between a movement of God's Spirit and the flavor of the month. If you were at Perkins right now, what would you be looking for to tell if this was different this season that we're in right now?
I am so biased to young people because I think they embody the hope that we need to see and experience. So I I would think if I could see a collective uh, engagement of college students and high school students that were involved in Black Lives Matter, uh, marching, protesting, whatever, that would be where I would put my hope. And what I mean by that is, um, I'm not your Rodney King. Let's kind of, you remember the famous words, "Let's all get along." I'm not that kind of hope person. And the reality of the hope that I profess as a person who believes in how God's Spirit moves is that um, it's not guaranteed that I will see um, the fruit of the labors, if I can use that metaphorically, but that I need to stay in the game so that there is the anticipation that eventually it's going to come. I've been around people who say, oh, racism will never end. I think it will end. Do I believe it's going to end in my lifetime or either the lifetime of my my nieces and nephews? No. I think that's generations down the line, but I do think that it's possible. I don't think it's going to be a result of the interracial marriage or things like that. I think that when there is a movement of people who are conscious to dismantle systemic racism and white supremacy, that we will begin to see some change. I mean, these white supremacy is an ideology. It's a way of being in the world that people have not totally start to critique and dismantle.
Mm-hmm.
So once that starts to happen, I mean, and I think that is happening in bits and pieces, tiny little bits and pieces. I was on campus at SMU. Well, I was actually going towards campus, and there were some white students that were crossing the street in front of me. And so I started tooting my horn and getting their attention because they had their signs and everything. And I did a thumbs up. So I got the smile. And I thought if they can just keep the momentum going and continue to make the case that we need to make some changes around a number of things that's related to race. That is the important part, so that they can change hearts and that they will vote and change leadership and demand that the leadership that is elected does right by everyone, especially Black and brown people. That's what is important. And that's where I kind of put my hope. If the Spirit of God can move through the lives of young people to transform systemic situations in our midst, where people of color, Black and brown people, are not thought of as human beings, then I have hope. Yeah.
So I heard you. You focused a couple of times in your response on young people.
Yeah.
For those of us that are not so young anymore, like myself, what do we do in the meantime?
Listen, pay attention, follow them. A friend of mine, a colleague of mine, was reflecting on how she has began to think about how Black Lives Matter, the Black Lives Matter movement is shaping the way she actually approaches decision making.
Okay.
And one of the things that got my attention was this collaborative aspect that she talked about, Black Lives Matter, that you don't see one leader, you see multiple leaders. And so you see multiple screens through Zoom that are collaborative. And that was so much like SNCC, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They were collaborative in their efforts. And that's why it took so long to make decisions, because they would talk about it and talk about it and talk about situations and strategizing until it was time until they came to kind of a place where everybody agreed to do something. And that's not unlike, the Quaker method of consensus making, where you sit and you reflect. And it's like, it's a new thing, but the old method, or it's the same type of thing. So I think that's important, where you've got a number of people who are collaborating together and thinking about ways to strategize and be in relationship and be in community. It's just lots of new ways to do things that young people are prepared to lead us into. That if we just listen, the problem is the majority of young people don't have the finances, they don't have the money, and we're in a capitalistic system. So money means a lot to a lot of people, and if you don't have resources, if you don't have that kind of money, if you don't have a PAC, or what do they call those things, a group of people who's going to put a whole lot of money behind this candidate or that cause or this cause, then you're kind of in a between a rock and a hard space. But I just trust that young people can figure out ways to do things that we have not even imagined. It won't be the first time, right?
Yeah.
Won't be the first time.
Yeah, Jesus was in his early 30s, I believe.
Absolutely, and they were like they were thinking out of the box. So
yeah, doing stuff, messing around on the Sabbath,
exactly,
healing on the Sabbath, getting in trouble. They were breaking all kinds of laws and rules.
All kinds of laws. I mean, there's no sanitized Jesus. I mean, I don't know why we do that, but if you really look at what was going on, that dude was, right. He would be out there with the Black Lives Matter. In fact, the Spirit of God is there anyway. So,
both of us serve institutions, very established institutions. You're in academia at Southern Methodist. I'm here in the Presbyterian Church. Both of our institutions have been around some time, and they are not always open to movements that come from outside positions of a named authority, and named power, often resistant, to any challenges to the hierarchical patterns of these institutions. How important is it? And I ask this genuinely, this is not a leading question. How important is it for us to look at, examine, scrutinize these institutions that we're a part of, as a part of this movement, to understand and also acknowledge the truth of our of racial injustice in our society or our culture? Does it matter?
Yes. If the church wants to be relevant, it does matter. But if the church does not care whether it's relevant or not, it's just that it's who you're talking to, right? Mm-hmm. I want the church to be relevant, but if the church is not relevant, I'm going to follow those who are following the right cause. I don't want to sound spiritual, but we were talking about Jesus a few minutes ago. I mean, that was a movement within itself, right?
Right.
I mean,
a movement within the institution.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if the church does not, if the church is not going to be relevant for addressing those things that dehumanize the human beings that God has created us to be in and to live into our fullest potential, then I want to go where the movement is going, because that's where I think the Spirit of God is. And that might leave some churches behind. So, and endowments can maintain institutions if the market is right, of course.
Right.
But the heart and the pulse of the people that really will make a difference won't be there. They will be going in the direction of where things need to happen to do right by all the people, including Black and brown people. I hope I'm being clear, because the church can be irrelevant in a wink of an eye, just like just like slang language is temporal. It's temporal. It's a fad. It's here today, and then you use a word, and they'll say, "Oh, that was an old word, right?" It's the same thing with the relevance of the church. If it's not focused on life-giving issues, then it's irrelevant. And I want to be a part of where the relevance is. I want to be attentive to and participating with those who are being led to make sure that all God's people can live and flourish, not just a select few. And that might be a remnant that doesn't have big bucks, that doesn't have endowments, but they just speak truth and they act and do justly by folks.
Right. Yeah, my observation is the bigger an institution gets and the longer it's around, the less likely it is to appreciate that following Jesus requires taking risks that might jeopardize its own survival.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And if I think the confidence in knowing that whatever you are now might evolve into something that's even better,
Right,
is a good thing. Now that's the kind of hope that I'm talking about. I would like to anticipate that whatever we are now, we can be better. And it doesn't have to look like what it looks like now. It doesn't have to be the physical, whatever it is now, right? It can be something that we have not, to paraphrase, asked or imagined.
Right. What I hear is that you're saying that your hope is anchored in the goodness of the struggle, not necessarily in the beauty of whatever future, might be present to you. That your hope redeems the suffering or the struggle that we're in right now in the present. Is that what I hear?
That's interesting words that you're using there, like redeem the struggle.
Redeem is I'm Presbyterian, so we
okay.
use words. Yeah, that's
you're forgiven. You're forgiven. Right. But I must say, I stay in the struggle. I am anticipating that there's going to be a better day because looking back and looking forward, I can see the possibilities, but even though I don't know what they are, you see what I'm saying?
So that's what I'm saying. Yeah, the goodness of the struggle remains true and firm for you, although you might not know exactly what the struggle will become or how it will be redeemed in the future.
Yeah. So if I just if I act justly, love mercy,
right,
and walk humbly with God, I'm in there. I'm down for the struggle. That's moving towards whatever it's going to be. And it doesn't, I don't anticipate, I don't think it's going to be easy. I've lived long enough to know that it's not easy. And that there's going to be, you lose friends along the way, you lose acquaintances along the way, you lose members along the way, right?
Right.
But you don't stop loving people because you lose them. You just hope that they will open up and see a new thing at some point. One of the things that I have learned from being in academia is that if you stand firm in what your truth is and what you feel that you're called to do, especially in the classroom and teaching, then you can go home and sleep at night. And there's no rewards. I mean, it's not like students aren't sending you cards and putting golden apples on your desk because you made them read Learning to Be White by Fandanka, or you made them read, the required reading and assignment was Jennifer Harvey's Dear White Christians. It was like, why are you having us to read this, Dr. Parker? Well, I think it's good for you to have this conversation with this author because it might be something that you can learn, and there might be some questions that you can begin to ask yourself, and as a leader, to ask the congregation that you're responsible for. You don't get rewards for those kinds of things, right? In fact, if your class is not required, students self-select and they drop out of your class. But if you can go to bed and say, well, I did what I was supposed to do. I did what I assigned the book I was supposed to assign, and I engaged the students in a hard and tough conversation, but it was a necessary conversation. I just wait for the 1 or 2 students that come back 4, 5, 8 years later and say, I really didn't like that book you assigned to us that time, but I'm really glad you had me read that book because it has helped me in my ministry. Then I went, oh, I got one. Right? Yeah. So that's all I kind of ask for is that's a little sprinkling that, okay, you're moving towards that rim of hope that you anticipated. Yeah. You might not see it, but that's an indication that it's on the horizon. Right. I think since we keep moving towards the horizon. So I will receive your idea of the struggle. Yeah. If I know I'm moving towards
it's not just my idea now, because that's also the Apostle Paul as well, right? So I mean, you take what he said. I think right now we see into a mirror dimly. It's blurry right now, right? It's like we can make out some of the shapes, but it's not clear yet what it is that we are becoming. So to embrace that unknowing, to embrace the part that we don't know yet, as much as we embrace and hold on to the truths that, we are certain of. That's the hard part for us right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And let me just be really concrete. So so what's really important for me as we move towards that horizon is voting, right? Registration, registering to vote, educating yourself about what to vote about, and then going to the polls and vote, and enabling somebody else to go to the polls and vote. Take somebody who cannot get there, right? Wear your mask and pick somebody up and take them to the polls so that they can vote. Or however, if they can vote in advance or however, make it happen, do your part so that you vote and that someone else votes. Even if you want to become a deputy registered voter, right? Voter and help others vote. However you do it, that's primary. But I also want to say to vote, to get people, even in our institutions, SMU, Perkins School of Theology, the Presbyterian Church, the CME Church, the United Methodist Church, vote people into place and hold them accountable. Mm-hmm. Get the people, that might mean putting African descended Latinx people in offices that they have not had privy to in the past, so that they can make decisions because they know from experience and they keep up, they learn what is necessary to lead people forward, not just keep the same people in office.
Mm.
So that for me, voting people who are new leadership, if I can use it that term, that represents all of the people in key places that have budgets that can do key things. And I'm not talking about little money either. I was mentioning money earlier. So if you've got leadership, new leadership that's in place that can do significant things, that's important. Now, what I'm not saying is put an African descended person in leadership and tell them to teach me what I'm doing wrong so I can be absolved of my guilt, my white guilt. I'm not saying that. That's where a person who is European descended that needs to do the work for themselves. I mean, I'm out when it comes to helping somebody figure out what's wrong. And, there's tons of books out there. Go do your homework. I can give you a list. But that's not what I'm talking about. I think leadership that has resources to do the work that's necessary to make the changes and vote. I can't say that enough.
Yeah. This will be my first presidential election voting. Did I tell you that?
No.
Yeah, first one ever. So I just earned my citizenship in 2017.
Congratulations.
And, very much looking forward to this November. First time I'll be able to vote. We we just moved here to Texas, and we discovered very recently that you have to have a Texas driver's license to vote in Texas, not just an ID. So even a federally issued passport, won't work. You've got to actually have a Texas driver's license, which I needed to get one anyway. Yep. Since I live here now, but hadn't got around to getting the Texas driver's license. So we go, like the other day, we discover that you got to have a Texas ID. And so we go to get one. Online, you have to register, schedule your appointment to go in and get your Texas driver's license. We look, and the first appointment in Dallas County, I think, was February of next year. I was like, no, this is not after all these years of waiting to vote, now I can't get my, but after some digging and searching, we figured out that you can go to a different Department of Public Safety office, so we're going out to, I don't know where it is, maybe Frisco, to go and go to the driver's license office there to vote. But we register, but even registering to vote didn't allow us to vote. We still had to go through one more step to be able to vote. So yeah, it was not an encumbrance of any great measure for us. I can take the time off of work to go to Frisco to find the office that will allow me to get my license. But for other people, it may not be so easy,
Yeah. Like I was saying earlier in Hattiesburg, I know people who literally died so that I can register to vote, so that you can register to vote, who were burned, who were lynched, and I'm sure some of the same people are in our cloud of witnesses who were in Texas, who did the same thing. So it's my grandmother, who was a shouting Baptist woman, would say, it would be an abomination to God if we wouldn't go and take the responsibility and vote. Whatever the inconvenience is, because people literally have died so that we could have that right. It's just so important. So important.
One person, one vote. It might be the most equitable. When done right, it's the most equitable thing we do, here in the United States, right?
Right.
Yeah. Let me, just for the sake of our participants who are here with us in this conversation, who for some of them may be hearing for the first time, your choice of reference for in saying African descended people. Talk to us about that. Explain, if you can, the specificity of your choice of words.
Well, I'm always learning from my colleagues and what is appropriate language to be more inclusive. So a number of my colleagues who are around the country and even in other places around the world, on the continent, in um, in, in South and Central America. I mean, all over the world, there are people who are descendants of the continent of Africa. So I've used that language as African descended and African Americans when I want to be more inclusive of a number of people to kind of represent that multiplicity, that diverse population that is global. So that's a phrase that I use in my writing and in my speech too when I want to refer to people who are of African descent. They're people of African descent in the Caribbean.
Right.
So yeah, that's the reason for that language.
Mm. That's where some of us may get tripped up, is just thinking about people who are only from the continent directly of Africa, but they're African descended people in Brazil even now that have been there for years and years. In Haiti as well. Church recently went to Haiti, and in January I got off the plane. I was like, oh my goodness, this is the most African place I think I've ever seen in my entire life. I was looking around at people whose faces look just like mine.
Yes. Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I've never seen anything like this.
Yes. And unfortunately, that island, which is half Haiti and then the other, the Dominican Republic, the Dominican Republic will not receive people who are Haitian, but born in the Dominican Republican part. So they are stateless. They don't have a nationality because of racism. So persons who are stateless, I mean, it's so intertwined, right? You've got these issues of colorism, and history with Dominicans, Dominican-born Haitians, and they are stateless because the people of Dominican Republic will not receive them. So it's just crazy. Yeah. But they are still African descended. And the people of the Dominican Republic are also African descended. Right. So yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother conversation, but yeah.
Tell us about your time in South Africa.
Transformative. I was quite naive in terms of the work that I thought I was going to accomplish in 6 months. But it was the young people at the University of the Western Cape who pushed me and basically said to this professor, "Are you kidding me? How are you going to do all of this work and you're just new on the ground?" So I appreciate this question because as I was thinking about the question, I was wondering, what did I learn? So as you mentioned, my whole goal was to go and understand the religious leaders and how they prevent and intervene in teen dating violence or youth partner violence. That's the proper language in that context, because youth is a wide range, up to like 30 years old. Okay. But anyway, so, and that's not monolithic either. I mean, you've got people who migrated in from Zimbabwe, from Botswana, from Zambia, from from many places. There's Ethiopians that are in South Africa. It's really a large group of people who are there. So you're talking about different cultures. And the students that I interacted with at the University of Western Cape pushed me on the whole fact that you're talking about youth that are from a multiplicity of cultures that are not considered as dating. That's a class issue. So I had to take most of my 6 months to get to know and form relationships with people so that they, one, could trust me to have a conversation with them, and two, that I could actually kind of begin to understand the different cultures that I need to engage to even have the conversation. So why did I go to South Africa? Because a lot of the scholarship around gender-based violence and teenagers and religious leaders is coming from that area. It's not to say it's not coming from the US. Maria Fortune and people from the Faith Trust Institute are doing great work. They have relationships with people like the South Africa Faith and Family Institute that's in South Africa, and a number of other organizations that are there. But I found in scholarship, the publications that have come out of University of Cape Town, University of Western Cape, and a number of other places more relevant to the kind of questions I'm asking about the problem, which is a health crisis of teen dating violence in the U.S. and youth partner violence there. So to get to your point, what have I learned? I have learned I'm learning. This is on the way. I'm so Methodist, I know. I'm on the way to learning how to be a good guest and not go in as my US American self and think that I already know everything. Okay. So to be humble and listen, like the students said, listen, you need to ask this question and you need to meet with these people. So I have learned to settle down, show a little humility, and listen. That's the first thing. I have learned that born frees, that age group here again, young people who were born 1994, right after apartheid, or doing as it was ending, moving forward, are not using all of the language that we hear from Invictus, the movie, or whatever, the Long Road to Freedom. Well, they're not all using the Nelson Mandela language. They are saying, shh, with reconciliation, where is the money from this rich continent, right? So I'm listening and observing and learning from what they call the born frees. And I'm learning how to not only be a guest, but to know how to receive hospitality. So I'm still on the way. I just hope and pray that they'll say, come back when the ban is lifted and you can fly back to Cape Town, South Africa, because right now we can't get back into South Africa, not from the US. But hopefully I will have, will have earned their respect and love because I have worked at, and I continue to work at, being humble and to listen and to respect the born frees and to know what it means to be a guest in somebody else's house rather than to assume I know it all. So that's not easy for us from the West, because we go in and we think we need to take care of everything because we know what you need.
What would a South African, what would a South African, I'm sort of throwing everybody together there from South Africa, but what would a South African say who was here with us now in the U.S.? What perspective would they be able to bring in their observations of what we're experiencing here in the U.S. as it relates to racial injustice?
Historically, I think you're well aware that those who were in the midst of apartheid were in solidarity with African Americans because that was just apartheid in a different place, right?
Yeah.
So you've got very knowledgeable and well-read persons who know James Cone and who know womanist scholarship, who know Black feminist scholarship. And I have found and been around scholars in South Africa that see the complexity of how these issues of race, class, gender, sexuality intersect. I mean, those intersecting issues that I just talked about is not an afterthought. And one of the blessings that I received, especially as I have begun to reach back to my science background and find ways to incorporate who I am as a person who was very much into biological sciences before I came to seminary, is how these things are interrelated. I just kind of, in passing, mentioned that teen dating violence is a health crisis. The CDC has said that. I mean, that's statistics that dating violence is a health issue. Okay. So I found the gift of exploring those connections between biomedical health and theology a welcomed conversation that I had not had opportunity nor time to explore until I was there. So I think I'm getting at your question. So I mean, there's lots of persons who are so well read and who are able to speak many languages. Not only many languages, because there's 11 national languages there, but also to speak about justice issues while they're also speaking about theological questions.
Right.
They're very active in the academy as well as in their own communities. I had the blessing of working with the Desmond Tutu Center for Religion and Social Justice with Dr. Sarojini Nadar, who's the director, and she's doing some amazing things with master's level students and doctoral students. And they were among the people that were pushing me to think about some of the questions that I wasn't asking. I mean, to open up new possibilities for thinking about my own research, right? Because of my affiliation with them. But they're also so active in social justice. It's not bifurcated for what one does as a scholar.
Right.
So when I would think about teen dating violence, I have to also think about patriarchy and racism and how those, and class, and how those are all kind of intertwined together. And the conversations that I've had around the relationship between patriarchy that the church needs to repent from, I must say. I mean, there is so much that's involved with patriarchy and how it kind of manifests itself, where men rule and whatever is male is right. Those types of patterns that we promote within the confines of the church without even thinking about it, you know. And it's a problem, and it manifests itself in men and women and same gender loving persons being abused when it comes to gender-based violence. It comes out of that. So those conversations were welcomed, and I will be forever grateful.
I'm glad you brought up. No, I said I'm glad you brought up this question of gender and as how it relates to struggles for justice. And I'm just thinking to myself about the hashtag that goes "Say Her Name." You know, hashtag "Say Her Name."
Mm-hmm.
You know, so of course, you know, it was created. It was used, created, and is now used to draw attention to the deaths of women like Breonna Taylor and Tatiana Jefferson, and who were both innocent women that were shot by police in their own homes. And then also Tanisha Anderson, who died in 2015 while she was in police custody, restrained face down by an officer in Cleveland. I don't ask this question lightly, but I do ask it. How does the particular challenge of being heard as a Black woman relate to the other important mass movement that has been popularly labeled with a hashtag, Me Too?
So I kind of alluded to that when I was talking about gender-based violence and among teens, and it can go for adults as well. If you don't view a person of color, a Black or brown person, as human, then you will do anything to them. I think we've seen that with not only the list of names that you've just given, but with George
Floyd.
or that Floyd and others who have been killed. I mean, that list is so long, it's just depressing. So because the humanity of an individual is like a stop sign that signals there's a limit to what you can or cannot do. But if you don't view a person that looks brown or browner or even boot black as human, then all bets are off. You will shoot them 7 times in the back. And you will bust into a woman's house while she's in her bed, like Breonna Taylor, and start shooting without even questioning it, because you don't view them as human. You know, it's been, I've been doing some reading with a famous Presbyterian woman, Dr. Katie Geneva Cannon.
Yes, yeah, Dr. Cannon.
And trying to understand her concept of unshouted courage, which I argue she embodied in all of her work, particularly in her teaching. But one thing, as I was reading the primary sources of her syllabus, her syllabi, her books, her lectures, statements, and even the interview that was done by Sarah Lawrence Lightfoot in the book I've Known Rivers, is Dr. Cannon consistently talked about her work was always towards the humanity of Black people. Consistently, the humanity of Black people, or Black humanness. Those were words, that's a quote. And I thought, as a Black woman, her argument is that there were Black women who was doing this work for the humanity of the Black community throughout history. Enslavement period, Reconstruction, all the way up to the present, right? And they were doing it consistently. And I think that she was also doing it in her teaching and in her scholarship. But I was looking particularly at her teaching. So if you've got one who you, as a Black female, you're discredited because you're Black. You're discredited as being human because you are female, but yet you've got to keep pushing for the humanity of your people. That's exhausting. And it's even mind-boggling that you got to make a case for being human. So as I kind of was, I guess, comfortable in the fact that, of course I'm human, but there are people every day who are not seeing Black women and Black men, but to your point, Black women as being human. So it's important to say her name because it validates the humanness that Dr. Katie Geneva Cannon, the Reverend Dr. Katie Geneva Cannon, was talking about. One of the things she taught me when we would be at the American Academy of Religion was that at the very first class session, she would always write her name across the board. It's kind of like if you've ever seen the show How to Get Away with Murder, and they write it all the way across the board, How to Get Away with Murder. Mm-hmm. She says, I write my name all the way across the board, Dr. Katie Geneva Cannon, because she wanted to make it clear in the very first session that I name myself and you're not going to name me. She said, I earned the right to be called Dr. Cannon. You don't have the right to call me Katie. Not a student, no. And I thought, you're absolutely right. You have to name yourself and demand that people name you, because that's the affirmation of your humanness, that you say your own name. So gender, sex, as well as race, That's a double jeopardy
Mm.
for a Black or brown woman. And you can go on and on and on. You can gender, race, sexuality. I mean, it can class, it can get on and on and on. That you're discredited from being a human being. So saying your name is so important. And when the real persons who were persons of color who started to talk about #MeToo, were crying out to say, this has been happening to us all along.
Mm.
But you see, it didn't get popular until it was in the media and people who were actors, actresses that popularized even the #MeToo. But Black women have been struggling from the bottom to get just recognized as being human, as Dr. Katie Geneva Cannon would say. For the humanity of Black people, particularly Black women, is essential. I know I've kind of been going in circles if I've explained this.
You have. I am my. Can I ask a follow-up question?
Sure.
If we are not considering if we're not acknowledging their humanity, then what are they to us?
Non-human.
But non-human, what organic, what biological label do we put on them? How do we classify them? If they're not human, then what living being are they?
They're not living beings. That's the problem. That's the problem. If you as an African descended person, I as an African descended person, we're like, why are we not human? But what I've learned from Dr. Cannon is that we are not considered as human. And we see it every day. When you see a teenager that says that they got to go out and defend the police with this automatic rifle and just shoot people in the street, and they don't even get stopped, they are considered as human with the right. But we are not. Because you didn't stop when I said stop, it's almost shoot you 7 times, 7 times in the back. You're not considered as human. That is an anathema for us. It's just not rational if you are in this skin and your skin. But that is the issue.
That is, we often, in fact, I know I have preached and in my own preaching called people to see the divinity in others. And what I hear you saying is divinity is like step 3. We just need to first see the humanity.
Exactly. And this is not original with me. I mean, I struggle with, as I sat with these primary sources, and I was like, that's right. So I was like, the question was asked, so why do you teach? And she would say, for the humanity of Black people, because it has been they've been considered as non-human. That's why they can be lynched, raped. It's just, the list goes on and on and on. And that's why we go crazy. Literally, we go crazy. You know that from Beloved, and you know that from, we go crazy because our humanity is not recognized. And we know ourselves that we are human, we are flesh, we live and we breathe. But if you are being, if people that you know are, if you on edge, there was, you might have heard about it, there was this mother sending her son off to college, and she was just saying, now make good decisions, don't go to the wrong places, because she was scared. She was scared that her child was not going to come home at the end of the term, because it's so familiar. What happened to George Floyd is so familiar. It's not that we've become numb to it, it's just we are considered as less than human. This whole idea of being a brute, and that comes out of history, that is the way people perceived us. 3/5 of a man, all of that, those policies that were put into place, because we were never seen as human beings. And we continue to struggle against that belief.
Hmm.
So yeah, divinity is number 3. Let's get number 1.
Hmm.
And you shouldn't have to be considered as human because of miscegenation, right? You're human because God breathed breath into your body. And we know genetically that all of our genetic backgrounds are so intertwined. I mean,
99%, I believe DNA in human beings is
exactly.
equivalent no matter who you are.
Exactly.
Right.
But hey, folks, science is not so sexy anymore. So,
Well,
am I making sense?
oh, too much sense, actually. That's the too much sense. We got some of our friends as participants have asked a couple of questions. I want to ask you: Is there? Gene Warner asks: Is there a difference between Black churches and white churches?
I need a little bit more.
That's all. That's all I've got. Is there a difference between quote Black churches and quote white churches? I don't know if Gene is asking this question, culturally or in the experience of people in this church. I would certainly say, I mean, the Black church as an institution is quite different from a church that has been predominantly majority white for some time. I would say there's a difference in that respect.
Yeah, culturally, in terms of its polity, I mean, you can go to a Presbyterian church that's predominantly Black and go to one that's predominantly white, and you're going to see sessions, and you're going to see some of the same practices. Those are things that are similar, but in terms of culture, you can see some differences there. I mean, racism is internalized racism is a vicious animal.
Ooh.
It's a vicious animal. There's sociological studies on some institutions that wouldn't let people into their congregations because of the color of their skin and the curl in their hair. You've probably heard of the comb test or the paper bag test. That's not fable. That's not fiction. That's real history. So you had in the state of Virginia, you had a number. I mean, not just in Virginia, but I know for that from sociological publications where people were allowed to enter literally because their hair could be combed through in a certain way, or their skin color was of a certain nature. I mean, the tacit test now would be, in some cases, finances. I mean, churches are organized along economic lines. Poor people don't go to all. I mean, you don't have a balance of poor people with rich people in the same congregation, and it just doesn't happen. And churches are the places we self-select. We're not forced to go to churches. We select what churches we want to. Some people go to churches because they don't want to be around more. They self-select churches because of their taste in liturgical expression, if I can put it that way. Some people like more structure. Some people don't want structure. Some people feel that structure handicaps the spirit, the moving of the spirit. And some people think otherwise. Sarah Little used to tease me and say, because I told her I was a good ecumenist, and she would say, "You got to be grounded, Evelyn, to be a good ecumenist. So you need to join a church." This is when I was in Richmond, Virginia, at the my first teaching job, the Presbyterian School of Christian Education, which eventually became Union Presbyterian Seminary. But she would always say, you got to be grounded in some denomination to be a good ecumenist. So I was like, okay, so because some days I want to kind of like low key Methodist, just take me through the rituals. Then some days I want to go to the Baptist where they're like, having a good time. And then when I had an opportunity to be with the Orthodox Church of the World Council of Churches, I was like, oh, I like this too. But it's not so. Some people can't get into enjoying finding spirituality in all of the different places, but I think it's pretty cool myself. But
it's been a real pleasure to be with you tonight, Dr. Parker, and I hope that we can find another way to make some room for your voice in the midst of our conversations here.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for being here, and we exit here. We didn't get a chance to talk about what's happening in the news even today in Portland, Oregon. Another protester or counter protester was shot last night, and I believe has died. And so our hearts are heavy there for whoever. The loss of life, period, no matter whose it is a tragedy on any level. And the polarization that is the polarization that manifests itself in violence breaks my heart for everyone that's involved. So we for the city of Portland, which I'm sure is on edge even today, and in the coming days, in all cities in our country that are trying as best they know how, to navigate these uncertain times. Hopefully we can find some shared identity and common purpose that will hold us together. That's got to be our prayer.
Yes. Ashe and amen.
Yes.
Thank you for this opportunity, and thank you, Whitney, for being our technician person.
Yeah. Bless everyone. Thank you all for being here tonight, and we'll see you September the 13th. Good night.
Good night.
Yep.